Hey everyone, Meteorologist Joe Martucci here at the Press of Atlantic City. We're here with another Something in the Air podcast. We're here with Dr. Dave Robinson, New Jersey State Climatologist, like we always do. And, July, another month where the first half was one way and the second half was another way. So the first half was on the cooler end. Second half, we did have that heat wave. We also had some cold oceans. We had a little bit of drought to talk about. So another action-packed month for us here. Let's turn it over to Dr. Robinson as we chat about the month that was. All right, everyone. It is the first Wednesday of August. Here we are recapping the month of July. And we have plenty to talk about here. We have heat, we have upwelling, we have borderline drought, all that stuff. And here to break it down with us, as we do at the top of every month, is New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. Dr. Dave Robinson, we have both been traveling around quite a bit this July. You a little further than me, though.
Yeah, I went across the puddle. I have this propensity of finding the hottest place on the world compared to normal to visit. Last summer, I visited the Pacific Northwest during their all-time heat wave. And last month, I arrived at Heathrow in London on their second hottest day all time, because the next day it was hotter. It got to 104 degrees at Heathrow and several other spots in the UK, which shattered the all-time. Like 25 stations in England broke the previous single point all-time record for our temperature. And Scotland, which we visited later in the trip, got up to about 95 degrees at a spot in southern Scotland for their hottest all time. So watch out where I'm going next summer, because you can be assured it's going to be record heat.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was actually quite the opposite of you. I was just in Las Vegas the last couple of days of July, and we were just looking it up before. It was only in the 90s 3 days in a row. In fact, on Sunday, the 31st, it was 91 degrees. It was cloudy. There were a couple of showers. In fact, the taxi driver said, now I have to verify this. He said, this is the first time in at least a year that it has been cloudy all day long in Las Vegas. And my cat Autumn here just can't believe it. She had to jump up to really get a piece of that action there. But yeah, first time in at least a year it's been cloudy all day. Do you buy that? You think that's reasonable?
No, they did not have a wet winter out there. We know they're in the middle of a major drought. So it would not surprise me that they went that long. It's anecdotal, but interesting nonetheless. I might add that 2 days after we got to the UK, the heat broke. And by the time we were up in northwest Scotland, in the Highlands and along the coast, the days were in the 50s. And that's not Celsius, that's Fahrenheit. It was windy, in and out rain. We were in rain pants, hoodies, and it was delightful. It was delightful. I might add, we were there to explore the geology.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Of England and Scotland. So we were way off the beaten track on multiple occasions. So it was just wonderful, but wasn't one of those ones where we were spending our time roaming the museums of all the cities.
Yes. Yeah, I could imagine. It wasn't a beach a couple of days either when you're in the 50s over there. I could imagine. Although I did see on Google Maps, when you told me, there are some public beaches in Scotland. I was fishing around on Google Maps.
Oh, absolutely. But you have to, be very brave to go in that water without a wet or dry suit. And it's dangerous, of course, too.
Or good.
No, their climate world is different than elsewhere. But you have to remember, we were up in northern Scotland, northwest Scotland, 58 degrees north. The sun, even in late July, the sun was setting at 9:30 in the evening, with the adjustment for daylight savings time, which all of the UK goes on during the summer. So
you said the water here, and that was a great segue into our first real topic here for this podcast, which is the upwelling that we've had and really specifically the second half of July. There were multiple days, and I'm looking at the calendar as I'm chatting with you here. We had July 22nd, the 24th, and I believe the 25th, where water temps were all in the 50s in Atlantic City, which is, below average, well below average, and had a lot of people scratching their heads saying, well, what the heck? We have a heat wave inland. We had an 8-day heat wave. We'll talk about that. But the ocean is so cold, and it's really been like that even like to the 31st of July. So, what's going on here? What's upwelling? How does it happen? And more specifically, I've heard a couple of people, right? They say, well, it wasn't like this at Asbury Park, but it was like this in LBI. Is there something to that?
Yeah, there's something to all that. It's strange but true. But the hottest weather along the Jersey coast usually results in the coldest surf temperatures. And that has to do with the upwelling you were talking about and something called Ekman divergence or whatever. But what happens, your hotter weather generally has southerly winds. And those southerly winds come up the coast, particularly even if they're southwesterly winds, because if you look at the southern half of the Jersey coast, it's kind of got a southwest to northeast little trajectory to it.
Sure.
And what it does is it pulls, the wind kind of pushes offshore. So as it comes up the coast, kind of pushes the ocean water offshore, and that allows the colder water from beneath to come up to the surface. So when the winds are blowing from the northwest, they push the water in towards the shore, and you have some of your warmest surf temperatures. So it's this inverse situation that we see time and again, and it does differ from the south to the north coast because of the orientation of the south and north coast. So it stands to reason they don't always join in concert with one another, both for surf temperatures, but also, as we've talked about before, for onshore sea breezes. Can really vary up and down the coast. And it just a slight change in the compass direction of the winds can make all the difference. And we saw that in spades, and it kept the temperatures along the coast in the atmosphere down. Witness that it was hardly above normal at the Atlantic City Marina Station.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't. It was really fairly seasonable there. And you say the wind, that slight change in wind direction. I just think back to so many times when we used to go on family vacation to the shore, and you would be there in the afternoon, and you get a little turn of the wind, you get that hot air blowing, and then 5 minutes later, it's pulling right off the ocean. It's just cold, and it's just interesting to see how varied your weather could be in such a short period of time. But, I want to say one more thing with the upwelling here. This was from Jim Everwine, somebody we know very well, one of my two weather parents alongside with you. He actually said I think it was August 1988, that the water temperatures in Atlantic City got into the upper 40s from severe upwelling. I don't know if you remember that, but that was something that he pointed out to me when we were talking about this.
Yeah, 88, I was actually at the National Climate Data Center down in Asheville, North Carolina, up in the mountains, where we actually had a cooler summer up there than up here in New Jersey. 88 was a hot summer across the country. It was a dry one in the center part of the country. It's when Yellowstone had major fires. That was quite a notable summer, and it was very warm up here in the mid-Atlantic, which makes plenty of sense.
Yeah.
Jim's never wrong. Jim's never wrong.
No, Jim knows the stuff. He actually sent me an email with this upwelling paper he did when he was at the National Weather Service. I got to pick at some point here. But yeah, it was just, people telling me they were surfing with boots, like those wetsuit boots that they had. And, right now, as we're talking, water temps are well into the 60s. Hopefully it stays that way, because I would like to get a few 70s here in the next couple of days. But let's start at the temperatures here. Like we already alluded to, the shore fairly seasonable due to those sea breezes. Inland, a little bit of a different story, although I will say the first half of July, relatively below average here. We had a number of days that were below average. But once we got to July, again, I got to look at my notebook here, 18th. There we go. Third time's a charm. We went 8 consecutive days at Atlantic City International Airport with temperatures in the 90s. Now, that constitutes a heat wave. A heat wave is 3 or more days of 90-degree or greater heat. It was our longest heat wave at ACY since a stretch from June to July back in 19. And here goes Rex, my other cat here. They're all loving me today. I put them inside, and they just stay here. Here we go, Rex. Look, everybody, we can say hi to Rex here. He's hanging out. But anyway, back in the 2018 was the last time that we were had a heat wave that long. We did end up getting to 99 degrees once here. But in South Jersey, it was cooking, and there were a number of days that were quite humid as well here. So that really helped to counterbalance that relatively cooler start to July that we had.
Yeah, and the airport came out 1.9 degrees above normal for the month, and that's based on the 1991 to 2020 normals, which we know were the warmest going well back in time. So I checked it out this morning. You may not look. That was the 6th warmest July on record at the airport.
No,
now,
I didn't get there yet.
Records only go back to 1958. But it was pretty warm inland, but the sea breezes, and remember, those sea breezes get cooled by the air gets cooled by the water moves over, and that water it moved over was cold from the upwelling. So quite a difference, just in miles from the coast and inland. And you mentioned the humidity, which is interesting because you had enough moisture down in there in parts of the south to keep it humid. But in areas where it was drier, with less precipitation and very dry grounds, humidity was a little bit lower, but the atmospheric temperatures were considerably higher.
Sure. And, like we talk about oftentimes, it was also the overnight warmth that drew in the warmer than average month here. I'm looking at ACY right now. It was the 5th warmest July when you look at those overnight lows here. We didn't get to that elusive 80-degree mark, but we did get plenty of nights well into the 70s as well at Atlantic City International and Millville as well during that time. And I always like to, we always like to talk about those overnight minimums because, sleeping without air conditioning when temperatures are that warm. I mean, you just did it in Great Britain, you were saying, it's tough to sleep, and that can cause some health problems as well.
Yeah. Fortescue in our weather network, Fortescue had 2 days in July where their low was 80 degrees.
Okay.
And that's because Delaware Bay is cooking.
Yeah.
They don't get that upwelling or anything. So that's indicative of just how warm it's been in near that water body.
Yeah. I was just in the Delaware Bay last week before I went to Las Vegas. We were in Greenwich. We did a video on commercial crabbers for my video series that I do during the summer here. And you were on the bay. There was no upwelling there. Like you said, it was plenty warm and plenty of crabs too, I might add, as well. Little did I know, crabs are actually not that good in Maryland this summer. So the Jersey crabs are really getting a premium price. So go us.
Well, we're always crabbing in New Jersey. So I guess that's good.
I guess that we'll take that as a good thing here. And then going back to the shore here, again, fairly seasonable. Looking at our records at Atlantic City Marina, which is really our main site at the shore here. We did wind up, like I said, close to the seasonable level for AC Marina, just kind of pulling up some stats right now. We were 0.5 degrees above the 91 to 2020 average here. Only one day reached 90 degrees, and that actually wasn't during the heat wave. That was on July 14th. And if memory serves me right, that was a day where we had straight west or northwest winds that pushed that heat. So again, going back to this ocean, it's very, I guess maybe convoluted is the right word. When you think southwest winds going to be a hot day at the beach, not so fast. Really, your west winds could be your hottest days at the shore.
Well, this past Saturday was an example of that. I remember sitting at my computer catching up after getting home the day before and seeing that the sea breeze kicked in at LBI finally, but it was pretty warm along the coast. That half degree above normal, as you mentioned, was 91 to 2020. Well, we have records, as you know, back to 1874 at the marina, and it was their 29th warmest July. But compare that to the airport, which was its 6th warmest, now back to 1958, and you can see how it was a really interesting contrast between the near coast and inland this month.
Sure.
And, gotta attribute it to the ocean.
Yeah. Last question before we get wrapped up with this half here. I need a letter grade for our Sure Summer Weekend Weather report card. I wasn't around. We have any suggestions here for our last weekend in July?
And I said I didn't pay as much attention as I could have, not being outside much this weekend, but it was a good weekend. It was a good weekend, and as usual, a dry weekend of late.
Yes.
It would be probably in the A range, as I recall.
Listen, you're the one who gives out grades more often than me. So if you're saying that's an A, that's good with me. We're putting it on there. That's our second A of the summer so far. We're actually on pretty good pace according to my subjective scale. It's about a 3.3 GPA so far. I'll have to see what this A does for us. But let's take a break. We'll come back on the other side. We got to talk about precipitation. We got to talk about drought. We'll talk about hurricane season 2. You're listening to the Something in the Air podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the Something in the Air podcast. New episodes, the first and third Wednesdays of the month here. First Wednesday of the month, like we're doing right now, recapping the month of weather that was with New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson. And that means we have to talk about how dry it was during the month of July here. Now, when we talk about precipitation this month, we're going to intertwine that with drought. Not that South Jersey is in an official drought, but there are other parts of New Jersey that are in a what we classify moderate drought. That is the we'll say the second lowest of 5 levels of drought. Dr. Robinson will talk more about that. But one thing I do want to say before we get into the drought situation was what a difference, a matter of miles makes with precipitation during the summer months, because Atlantic City International Airport had 4.76 inches of rain, about average, a little bit above. Meanwhile, you go to the marina over at the coast, 7, maybe 9 miles east of that, and you're at 2.20 inches of rain, and that's well below average. And mind you, the average at the coast is lower than the airport. So anyway, with that being said, let's talk about precipitation for the month, and then let's get into drought secondly.
Yeah. As you said, summertime, we didn't have a tropical system come up to soak the entire state. So it was the hit or miss storms. And there were a lot more misses this month than hits. But if you happen to be in that area that got under one of those storms, you picked up 1 inch, 2 inches in just a matter of a half an hour or an hour. But those areas were less common than we see in most July. So we're coming statewide. We're going to be below normal for precip this month, probably about the 15th driest July, going back to 1895.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to be about the 9th warmest statewide, but you can see hot and dry. But if you were in the right spot, and Atlantic City Airport was one of those spots, there you are. Galloway was the wettest spot in Atlantic County, according to our CoCoRaHS reports, at 5.35 inches. But just not that far away, as you said, in Estelle Manor, it was 1.45 inches for the month. So what a variation. Now, if you go down to Cape May, there's a lot more commonality. Lower Township and up in Woodbine, they got to 2.46 for the month for the wettest locations, but Sea Isle City at 1.79 was the driest. So they were below average, but it was pretty close together as you went in Cape May. But Ocean County, up in Ocean, you had incomplete records from Barnegat, but they were 3.96, but they had a little bit more than that, but they didn't report every day. Long Beach Township at 301 did report every day, but you go north to Lakewood, 0.68 inches.
Oh.
For one of the driest spots in the state. It wasn't the driest spot in the state, but it was one of the driest spots. So a real difference as you went up the Parkway through Ocean County, Monmouth County, very dry. Then you go up into Middlesex, very dry, Union dry. Bergen County was on the wet side. So it is a very interesting dispersion of precipitation totals during the course of the month. But overall, the state was dry.
Yeah. And that's and partially helped to lead to why it was so hot as well. Just kind of looking back at some of these events we had, the one that sticks out to me, at least from our neck of the woods in this corner of state perspective, was July 25th. The airport picked up 3.15 inches of rain. Now, here's the interesting thing. It broke a daily record, though it was a little bit of low-hanging fruit. The previous record, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was about 1.5. But it actually more than doubled the next highest rainfall total we've seen this year. Just to give an idea of how relatively dry it's been, because, and now we'll transition to drought. Down here, Atlantic, Cape, Cumberland, there was a period of time during the spring where we were in that moderate drought, or that first stage of drought out of the 4 levels. So we haven't really had too much of the big rains until you get some of these summertime thunderstorms. Now going into drought, we are in a moderate drought, and there's 4 different stages: moderate, severe, extreme, and exceptional. That runs from about Hunterdon County over to Somerset, northern Middlesex, most of Union, part of Essex, and Hudson County. But for us down here, we're in this abnormally dry stage, which, and Dr. Robinson can explain a little bit better, kind of a transition stage between no drought and drought here. And we've been in that for quite some time here, and actually stems still from that drought, the official drought that we were in during the spring. So just want to make sure I was all kosher on that info, and then feel free to chime on in.
Yeah, you are. And we just haven't been able to crack it with enough rain to get out of D1 or D0 in the South since the spring. But it has gotten better, just waiting for a couple soakers to get out. Now, Southern Ocean County and around Atlantic City, we're in D0, and we're going to pull them out of D0 this week. It's just a small sliver along the northern end of that D0 because of the rain we saw at Galloway and at the airport and so on and so forth. But up north, it's a different thing. We've pulled Bergen County out of D0. Sussex County never quite got in it, but the Northern Highlands are D0. And then it gets down to, you mentioned, Hunterdon, Somerset, Middlesex, Union. And now we're going to see it by the time people listen to this. Maybe, I don't know if you're releasing this on,
it's going to be Wednesday, so we have some breaking news coming.
Yeah, well,
you heard it here first.
So let's say you didn't hear it here,
right?
The Thursday map, which comes out Thursday morning, is going to bring D1 down into Monmouth County, throughout Middlesex County, even a little bit of northern Mercer County. And that's based on 30-day rainfall that is well below 25% of normal. So this is a flash drought, if you will, something that comes on during the summer when you have a lot of heat, you're desiccating the ground, the soil moisture quickly drops, fire danger rises, the rivers start running below average. It doesn't mean the reservoirs are emptying. So it's not hydrologic in that water resource sense. In some cases, you can't pump the water out of the ground fast enough to get it to the customers because they're using so much on their lawns and gardens. So we're getting into a little bit of a precarious position in the central part of the state because it's been so very dry. Numerous spots, under an inch of rainfall for July, when normal is between 4.5 and 5 inches. June wasn't all that wet, particularly the second part. So we're running deficits of 5+ inches of rain just over the last 60 days. And with that, I can attest, looking out my campus window, I see nothing but total brown with the lawns there. And there are trees on my walk out to the parking lot that are losing their leaves. Younger trees are losing their lives, it looks like. And shallow-rooted trees are losing their leaves as well. So it's pretty dramatic in some respects here, but it's a small area, and that's the important part. This isn't a statewide issue in a large sense at this point. It's really concentrated kind of along the 287 and then out 78 kind of corridor through that area, and now shifting a little south. So we're going to really have to keep our eye on it. We don't have to make up a 5-inch deficit to get out of this. I want to make that clear. You don't want to do that, frankly, especially all at once, but you need to start getting more timely average rainfall. And then you start seeing things green up again. You probably start seeing the temperatures fall some too, because compared to normal, the central part of the state has been the hottest in recent weeks, with the 100-degree mark being hit 4 or 5 times at some stations in central Jersey.
And just real quick before we turn to hurricane season, since we were in South Jersey in a moderate drought earlier, and now parts of central Jersey are, yes, I said central Jersey. How often do we get a moderate drought? What's the likelihood of seeing that in any given year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, this is all somewhat subjective because you're looking at so many different indicators of drought, and there's so many different types of drought. But a D1, or this moderate drought, I would like to call it a mild drought, if you will. It's about every 10 years. You might see something like that. A D0 every couple to handful of years. So it's not that unusual, not that exceptional. When you get up to D3s and D4s, you're talking about once in 25, 50 years, or even beyond that. So that's when conditions get really dire. So this is something, once a decade, maybe a little rarer than that. So that's the situation there. Nothing of great concern at this point, but one should always conserve water. And this just reminds us that we really have to be careful with our use of water.
Yeah, absolutely. We got about 90 seconds left here. Just want to talk about hurricane season. August, we do start to ramp up quickly. Thankfully, we have been pretty quiet across the Atlantic. If you're listening to this, in early August, still looking to be relatively quiet now. For Jersey, what do you think in terms of how we're going to progress through the rest of the season? In relation to La Nina or El Nino here. We are in a La Nina.
I mean, we've had 3 very weak storms so far in the Atlantic Basin. The Eastern Pacific Basin has been a little more active. Right now, there's dust coming off the African continent, which warms the upper atmosphere and suppresses the rising motions. The trade winds are pretty strong. Pressures are on the higher side. At best, we're in a very weak La Nina, but the outlooks all suggest that it's going to be a pretty active season. And as you said, it's early. This is the first time in like 5 years we haven't had a hurricane by the 1st of August in the Atlantic Basin. They've all been tropical storms thus far, but we may be singing a very different tune when we get together at the beginning of September. So don't let your guard down. Their suggestion is it was going to be an active season. There's a potential still there for it to be active. The ocean temperatures are above normal throughout the Atlantic. So keep an eye on things. Right now, tranquil. But remember, the peak of the tropical season in the Atlantic is the first 2 weeks of September. So we've got a long ways to go.
Yeah, we have a long ways to go. And hopefully when we come back in September, it's quiet. But like you said, more than likely, we'll probably be talking about something spinning around. Thank you again to Dr. Robinson for talking to us all about the month of July. There was heat, there was cold waters, there was drought. Hopefully the month of August will not be as extreme, although it does look to be on the warmer end. We'll be back with you on August the 17th, guest to be determined. And then we'll be back with you with Dr. Robinson the first Wednesday in September the 7th. So book a calendar for the next couple of weeks. We'll have more with you on the Something in the Air podcast. Until then, everybody, take care, and we'll talk to you soon.